The session is now recording. Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Daniela Cuba, and I am in the committee of the Young Statisticians section of the Royal Statistics Society here in the UK. We are obviously very, very honored and very grateful to get to participate in this event, and especially because we have such great speakers with us today. And the layout of the session will be the speakers will introduce themselves for a little bit, tell us about who they are and what they do. And then later we will jump into a more panelist format with some pre-decided questions that I will be asking our panelists. So without further ado, can we start with you, Elinor? Can you please introduce yourself?
Hi there, just checking you can all hear me. Great. Okay, so my name is Elinor Jones. I'm an associate professor teaching in the Department of Statistical Science at University College London in the UK. So I'm very honoured to be asked to speak at this event, but I will admit a little bit of imposter syndrome in there as well. But thank you very much for having me. So the best bit about working in statistics for me is the variety of opportunities that are available and the scope for collaboration. So everyone needs a data expert. So I'm just going to give you a bit of a context to my career journey. So I started with a theoretical PhD, which was in probability rather than statistics. And my very first job was as an applied statistician, which was a massive shock to the system as I realized I had a lot to learn in terms of technical statistical skills. So I found that incredibly daunting, especially as it felt rather lonely with people expecting me to have all the answers. And I'm sure many of us have had that sort of experience in the past. So the biggest lesson I learned from my very first job was that it's okay to say that I don't have all the answers. And mostly collaborators are just grateful that you are willing to figure it out for them. So from there, I took a chance on a postdoctoral position in an area of statistics that was completely new to me. So again, a little bit daunting. And then I returned to a more of a consultancy role from there. So finally, I made the move back to academia, where I've been working for nearly a decade now. And I really feel that I've found my niche in educating the next generation of statisticians. So collaboration has been the constant theme across all of my jobs, despite the varying roles that I've taken. So the impact of collaboration for me has been firstly in development of statistical knowledge, and that's partly because I often work with statisticians with either different expertise or perhaps who are more experienced than me. But it's often because I have to teach myself new stuff in order to work with other collaborators. But it's not just the technical skills, and this is the thing that I really want to emphasize today. It's really important to develop your softer skills in collaborating with non-statisticians or non-data scientists. So technical skills, of course, very important to our roles, but building these soft skills, soft people skills are going to accelerate your career. And for me, especially, I really feel that it's those sorts of skills that have really helped me in my career, especially if you work in a multidisciplinary team. So I will finish my bit by, I suppose, giving you some examples of things that I wish people had told me at the start of my career. So the very first thing is that I wish someone had told me that it's okay to say that you don't know something. So that's been the most difficult lesson for me to learn. If it's available to you, ask questions from more experienced people. And generally, my experience has been that people like to talk about the stuff that they know, and nobody knows everything. So if you can, reach out to those that you think might be able to help you. Secondly, I wish someone had told me that the most common issue that I would face as a statistician is about managing expectations about what a statistician can do and in what sort of time scale. So I have no answer to this, other than to say that people want to be heard. So listen carefully, address each point they make, and if you can, offer an alternative. So something that I do quite often is to say, I can't do this because, but how about this instead? Now, something that I am prone to doing, and I'm keen to emphasize that be aware, if this is a trait that you also have, is not to overpromise. It's really tempting to want to please people in the moment by promising the earth, especially as someone that's junior, but it might come back to bite you, as it has for me many times. So trust in your skills and your expanding experience. So the third point I wish someone had pointed out to me initially is that if you're working in a large team, being heard can be quite difficult. So taking time to build relationships is really key here. And if you can, find an ally within the team, someone who can support you and make sure that you get your message across. Basically, someone to watch out for you. It's not always possible, but actively building those relationships with team members can be a powerful tool in your career. So finally, something that I'm really, really keen on is to return the favor. So store up your experiences in climbing the career ladder, whether those are positive experiences or negative experiences, because those negative ones often serve a purpose. And make sure that those who are coming next aren't subject to the same negative experiences that you may have encountered, but do experience the ones that you found particularly helpful. So in the interest of time, I'll finish there and hand over to the next speaker. Oh, you're on mute, Daniela.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, lack of practice now. Thank you so much, Helena. That was lovely. Lucia, would you mind going next?
Yes, of course, no problem. Hi, everyone. I'm Lucia Barbone. I work at the UK Office for National Statistics. I am originally Italian, and I've moved to the UK some years ago now. It's a bit scary to see how quickly time has been flying. And I have experience in a range of industries. So I started from similar to Elinor. I started in academia, so I did my PhD. I must say that I'm feeling a bit nervous about the fact that I am technically an economist by trade and not a statistician. However, statistics has been the bulk of my PhD. I've done a lot of econometrics, which is statistics applied to economics, and that's really where my passion for data analysis and all things statistics really emerged. It's always been there, but it really became clear during my PhD. I then worked a little bit in academia, and then I decided that that wasn't the right path for me. I really enjoyed it, but I decided to try something different. And then I started working in consultancy first. So I did a lot of impact evaluation for government policies, so try to understand what works and what doesn't. Then I did a lot of market research, and especially kind of public affairs research and opinion research. And then I joined the UK civil service, which is the public sector. And I covered a range of roles since I've joined that. So I worked in international development first, doing both research and then some more kind of country-related work. And then a few years ago, I worked on trade and assessment of trade tariffs. And then a few years ago, I moved to the Office for National Statistics, where I lead on all things quality. So I support the organization in setting our framework for quality assurance of everything that we do in terms of statistics and publishing statistics. I don't want to take up all this time talking about myself, so I'm just going to move to the next bit that I wanted to start talking about collaboration. So I'm a huge fan of collaboration, and the first thing that I wanted to say is that when I first started my PhD, again, similar to Elinor, I thought that I needed to have all the answer, and being an expert means that you know everything and you don't need others, basically. And then basically my career has proved me not wrong, even more than wrong than that. You cannot work with others, and luckily so. I mean, one of the reasons why I really love the job that I'm doing right now is because of the collaboration, the opportunity to work with other people. And this because I truly believe that collaborating with others is what gives you superpowers. So it kind of removes away that burden on being able to know, or feeling like you need to know everything. You don't need to know everything. You just need to be surrounded by the right people that can share with you and from which you can learn, and then they can bring you different things, different angles, different perspectives, different backgrounds even, and so your knowledge and your critical thinking expands just because you are surrounded by the right people. So that's definitely a superpower for me, because your knowledge basically increases exponentially with the amount of people that you're surrounded, up to a point, I guess, but too many people, then it's difficult to manage. But it also helps you to feel a bit more confident when you're taking decisions, because it's a good way to kind of, if you have somebody that you can talk things through or that you can discuss with, you are more sure that you haven't missed a piece of the puzzle. And that helps also with the day-to-day work, frankly, and kind of making sure that you're doing the right thing and making the right decisions. In terms of, I think we're going to be talking a little bit more about some career tips later on. But my first thing related to collaboration is that it's really important that you start building. You invest in your ability to engage with others. So don't underestimate the fact that you might be a sociable person or somebody that kind of easily connects with others. You might not be. It's not all about natural ability. So even if that is not something that comes natural to you, that doesn't mean that you don't have the same potential everybody else. You do have the same potential, because we all need to put in some work on how do you engage with others, how do you network with others, and how do you build that thinking. So don't think that any kind of of your character traits will be an impediment, because trust me, it will not. I work with people from extrovert to introvert. I am quite an introverted person. But the point is, build on your strength. So try to identify what is that you bring to the table and build on that. And I'll come back to this later on. I'm going to stop here so that Kelly can also come in.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you both. First of all, I would like to say Happy International Day of Women in Statistics and Data Science. And interestingly, last year, as a member of the American Statistical Association, I did write an article which is called Finding Ada. Ada means Ada Lovelace Day. So we're also celebrating this particular occasion. And also I want to, thank the organizer, particularly the Royal Statistical Society, for inviting all of us, and as well as the UCL colleagues who were very, proactive in organizing this session. So my current work is the head of medical analytics and real-world evidence at a company called Viatris. Viatris was formed about 3 years ago through sort of a merger between parts of Pfizer and another company in Milan to form this new company. So in a way, it's lots of excitement, and there are things that are very new, but also there's continuity. I also want to have a bit of a disclosure, is that what I'm about to say in this session really represents my own sort of views rather than views of my employer. So first of all, as the head of medical analytics and real-world evidence, I do have two verticals within my sort of a center of excellence. The first one is real-world evidence. Real-world evidence comes from real-world data, and real-world data typically are data from outside clinical trials in the healthcare setting. The second part is health economics outcomes research. So I would say I will have some connection with the economic side. However, my own background, I did have PhD in statistics. So I'm trained in statistics. My undergraduate educations were mathematics and physics. So I really like something quantitative And I don't necessarily see sort of statistics and data science as things that are static. And then there's a lot of sort of this Venn diagram of overlap, but there are also some distinct sort of characteristics. And then these fields are both evolving. Now, you know, my first sort of a decade, my experience was in academia. I also did postdoc training, but my area was in fact both radiology and health policy. So from radiology, as you know, there are lots of applications in terms of artificial intelligence. Just, you know, something called computer-aided diagnosis. This is a very sort of interesting you know, field in terms of looking at the pixel and voxel image data to identify the targets of interest, for example, tumor and other, you know, targets. And in terms of health policy, that also gives me this perspective in terms of looking at the bigger picture, in terms of, you know, social determinants of health, in terms of access to care, in terms of international policies, impacting, you know, certain sort of critical decisions. And, you know, and I also had the appointment in terms of in the hospital setting. And that's really interesting, where it's very fertile ground for collaborations. And, you know, in terms of my academic work, I was very proud to be selected on a committee which is called the Joint Committee on the Status of Women at Harvard, where I was faculty member. And then my interaction with UK really came when I had, as a data scientist myself, and also with statistical background, as a statistician, I actually worked for Barclays Capital as a quantitative analytics you know, expert. So in that sense, I really enjoyed sort of being in London. So this is a bit homecoming for me, although it's a bit virtual. And in addition, you know, from that interaction, there are also sort of points where I learned in terms of things where you need to think about speed and fast turnaround, because the financial markets are waiting, you know, they cannot really wait, right? And finally, then in industry, my work in healthcare setting, you know, back to healthcare setting, my work was at Pfizer as, you know, the outcomes research scientist. And then that moved down to sort of big data arena, in other words, real world data. And then also head of medical analytics and insights. That's where that insight part is so important. And finally, currently through this new company that was formed from the existing companies, I still continue my work in terms of this analytics and real world evidence field. So my recollection in terms of collaboration, that started with when I was a toddler, I would say. Well, why would you say, you know, you have collaboration at home? Well, what happened was that I started to take some fruits and apples, and then as some sort of humor, you know, I'll take this big apple. And then my family started to say, oh no, you need to think about correlation with age. What about grandparents? Well, that was when I was thinking, well, decision making, that's where you have to sort a number of apples and then make decisions where you need to respect people. But that's when you have order statistics. So that was when I started to think about how to collaborate with them. Well, you can even negotiate once in a while. Can I have that relatively big one, but not the best, you know, the biggest apple? So I think that's kind of a give and take. It's very much the essence of teamwork, right? And then you also have superiors who are your grandparents, your parents, and so on and so forth. So joking aside, what also hit me, one example was that when I was an undergraduate student, I was very much focused on thinking about being an engineer. You know, I really love sort of hardware. I had physics background. I like sort of AI. I like devices. That was when there was a female, you know, professor who was my undergraduate math sort of advisor. One day, she just actually suggested one thing. Have you thought about statistics? Well, honestly, that was not something I had ever thought of. And that was when you realize, you know, later when you look back, how important it is to have somebody who can recognize your talent, but also being a mentor. And sometimes mentoring, comes in terms of all shapes and forms, that you do not need to kind of really just have a particular problem to solve. Sometimes it's conversational. You have this trusting relationship, and someone just suggests or make some suggestions. Well, that's also part of the reason I came to this, this webinar. So that's really wonderful. So finally, another final example is that I was chair of the statistical partnership among academy, industry, and government committee of the ASA, American Statistical Association. I would say my learning there is that really collaborations, the other aspect of collaboration, which could be in a way somewhat different, is partnership, right? Partnership could be from multiple organizations. Collaborations could be internal, but could also be external. They come in all kinds of forms and shapes and sizes. It could be two people coming up with a brilliant idea. And right now it's the Nobel season, right? So a lot of that will be just few people. They really worked on high impact sort of problems to tackle. On the other hand, could be organizational, could be very systematically, planned. So I think when we think about collaborations, my my learning from multiple kinds of collaborations is that you first of all need to understand stakeholders. So you need to do a bit stakeholder mapping. Who is the sort of ownership, who has the ownership of that particular collaboration? And what will be my role on this? Would I be, an active participant, or would I be a consultant? Sometimes I will just need to be aware of, what's happening. So I think you need to kind of, as young statistician, really understand, not just say being a doer. First of all, observe who is doing what. So that way you can make it streamlined in a way that can be more efficient and also pleasant sort of interactions across different stakeholders. So that's my sort of a tip in terms of collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you to all of our speakers. That was actually really, really good, and it's always really impressive to hear about everything that people do and accomplish. So thank you very much. And I guess a lot of you touched on what will become our first question already, and that is, could you sort of advise on what you think the critical skills are for a statistician or a data scientist? And I guess this is particularly in regards with collaboration, and many of you have already mentioned some things.
Who would you like to start?
I think, Lucia, you seem perfect to start if you'd like.
So I think obviously there are a lot of skills that are very useful. My recommendation from my experience would be so the first thing is to make sure that you are able to speak the same language of the people that are working with you. And I don't mean language in a sense of English, Italian, or any other language that you might be speaking, but in a sense of talking about the same concepts and talking about and have a similar understanding of the word. This is not going to be always the case. You'll see that even with people in your organization, people focusing, for instance, on delivery aspect rather than data analysis, for instance, making an example, they will have different concepts, a different jargon. So it's important that you spend some time with them to understand what is that some concepts mean for them and what is that concerns them. So what are their priority? What is that it's important for them? What is that they're being asked to do? Because then your job becomes more effective. So it's kind of like know the person next to you, know your colleague, know the person that you're talking with. And the flip side of it is you need to listen. So you need to really listen to what the concerns that people have, the goals that they have. So spend time listening to people and picking up on new concepts. So my advice would be try to attend any free events that are available, any seminars in your organization. People often do this kind of like lunch and learn, either in a university or or at your own company. Just try to kind of get in a room with all of this stuff, because just being exposed to something that is different from you, that's going to help develop your understanding, and it's going to make you more effective as a data analyst or a statistician. I'm going to stop there. Elinor, did you want to come in?
Sure, happy to come in next. So for me, it's all about curiosity. So that is, I think, very much in line with what you were saying, Lucia, as well. So yeah, we can talk a lot about technical skills here, but as I said earlier when I was speaking, I think those broader skills of dealing with people are going to be super, super important for you to get your work done as efficiently as possible and to the best of your ability, but also in terms of career progression for you as well. So again, same for me, it's all about listening and communication. So really listening to your collaborator or client or whoever it is you're working with, and ask lots of questions. I think when I was just starting out, I was afraid of asking questions because I was afraid of appearing stupid or not having the right skills, and that's a real shame. So ask lots of questions, even if they seem like really simple questions, and really get to know what it is that the person that you're working with, what is it that they really want. So in my experience, when I used to work in consultancy type roles, often I'd find that those people who are working not as statisticians, but as maybe scientists, they didn't necessarily have a clearly defined goal or the research question for what they were trying to do. And so it was often a big part of my job to really try and nail down exactly what it was that they wanted in order for me to be able to help. So that was a massive learning curve for me, in just being brave enough to ask questions and keep saying, no, we need something far more precise than that so that we can actually get going on the statistics side of it. So yeah, keep communicating and taking time to build those relationships. They're really going to serve you well in the future. I think Lucia made a really good point there in trying to attend as much as possible, in order to develop those softer skills as well. And I am part of the Royal Statistical Society in the UK, and they do offer a lot of free events. So it's worth, for example, joining the mailing list there so that you can be updated on those sorts of events that are good to join.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I will put a link, to a book in the chat line. So this book is called Leadership and Women in Statistics. It's really worth, reading in terms of many women's experiences. In this book, I did contribute a chapter. So the chapter that I wrote about was on what kind of individual, cultural and organizational contexts that could lead to sort of successful work, and successful work often will embody sort of collaborations. So I think, first of all, as Lucia said, and also Elinor, you said that not everybody is an extroverted person. So on the team, in fact, introverted, people could be really great thinkers. They could be really the brains behind the project. So I think, in terms of that side, you can really think about, in terms of myself as an individual, what is the kind of communication style that I feel most comfortable with? And I think you don't need to sort of change yourself, but you need to tailor your communication towards the purpose, of a particular project. In that case, one really useful way is called the pyramid principle. So I'll put the chat later. So pyramid principle is that, what I learned is that, first of all, sometimes you can, directly sort of provide the kind of recommendations. Then you justify your recommendations with further details. I think for many scientists, particularly data scientists, we're really caught up in the technical details. So we get very excited. And finally, as you know, from abstracts of publications, at the end of it said, therefore, this is the conclusion. But then, as you know, depending on the context, right, a lot of times we want to know, is that a yes or no? What are some gray areas? So I think if you sometimes bring that aspect first, then say, okay, let me understand, all the details. So you need to tailor the approach in terms of the audience. The second part is that you also need to be aware that there are organizational contexts, right? And sometimes you go to an internship, that's where sometimes it's called the impossible triangle, which is, do you want to focus on quality? That's a must-have, right? Quality is always a given. But then beyond quality, the other sides of the triangles are really the cost and then the timeline. So if you want to do it fast, you might need to up the cost and vice versa. So on the team, sometimes, the turnaround pressure is so high, and many people on the team, collaboration team, they would say they feel they burn out. So you really need to balance these different elements, and that's called the impossible triangle, to achieve all of it. So you have a little bit sort of a give and take. So that's where negotiation skills come in play. And finally, I'm also having, number of years as an editorial board member on the Royal Statistical Society, American Statistical Association, and the Statistical Society of Australia's joint magazine, which is called Significance. What I learned from that side is it's so important to think about data storytelling. So it's not just say you see the problem, and then, of course, as theorists, we love to see the beauty of equations. We love to understand the frameworks. At the same time, you need to know that the audience might be lost in terms of those type of excitement. So you need to tailor your approach in terms of telling the story with your data. So I think that is also quite, important skill in terms of stakeholders who are not necessarily statisticians or data scientists. So I will put some, materials in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. I think you've all very much overlapped on the fact that you need to communicate with whoever you're trying to collaborate and do that as effectively as possible. And actually, Kelly, maybe we could start with, because you sort of touched on our next question, which was sort of like, what types of challenges and difficulties do you think statisticians and data scientists, in particular women, encounter in the multidisciplinary environment where you have many stakeholders and many interests represented?
Now, first of all, I don't want to make it stereotypical. As I mentioned, that there are individual, cultural, and organizational contexts. But we women do have things in common, right? And many times we are very meticulous. We really want to know every aspect of everything. And sometimes I think the challenge becomes on the team collaboration. Sometimes when things go well, that's great. When you have ample time, that's wonderful. But other times, it's really a visionary thing, is that sometimes it's called bet on big data. Okay, you don't have all the facts. You just want to aspire the teammates. You want to say, yeah, realistically, what are some pros and cons? And then I will write this down. What is the realistic chance I want to estimate in terms of success of this project? And I think, women need to be bold enough, to really trust our own sort of skill sets. And first of all, and then secondly, we also need to really, have these people who are allies. It's not just enough that we're going bold, because sometimes culturally, it's our expectation is that we're very nurturing. At the same time, we really want to make sure that, before going into the projects, outside the project itself, we have an environment that's very supportive of women to be able to speak our minds, to be able to really show our skill set, and then show how brilliant we can be. And then, in turn, we also need to be very nurturing and encouraging in terms of all aspects on the team, right? So I don't want to see it in terms of men versus women. I really want to see that people are just different. We're very diverse. How do we embrace the differences, but sometimes resolve the conflicts?
That was, yeah, that was really insightful. Thank you, Kelly. Eleanor, would you like to add to that?
Sure, and I really like that Kelly brought up that don't want to make this sort of distinction, women are like this and men might be like that, or, you know, if you don't identify with either of those sexes. But in general, the biggest difficulty that I've faced is in managing expectations, and occasionally having to forcefully explain why something that's been requested isn't reasonable, and that's usually due to something like timeline. Isn't relevant. So, you know, what's been requested isn't really going to answer the research questions that we all set out to do in the first place, or frankly, I'm sure lots of people have had this experience, isn't right. So, you know, when people want something very specific done that you don't feel is appropriate, or in an interpretation that just doesn't match what's actually been done. So for me, when I started out, I really wanted to prove myself, and I think that might be a common trait, especially among those who identify as women. And I also wanted to be super, super helpful. And again, I think that's something else that many of us struggle with, and to balance that. And I also felt, and I will say this again, because I think a lot of us do feel this, I also felt like an imposter, that I didn't, you know, that I might not belong in that sort of environment. I don't have a sufficient level of skills. And in my experience, I think women might have a maybe harder time to get to the point where they feel comfortable and confident in the skills that they have, in the fantastic range of skills that they have. And one of the most liberating experiences for me was actually to talk to other women in statistics and in data science, and realizing actually it's not just me that feels like this. A lot of us also feel like this. So if that doesn't apply to you, fantastic, keep going, that's brilliant. But if it does apply, know that you are not alone, and don't be afraid to open up. There are plenty of women in stats, you know, our ladies as well, groups that really support women. Asking for a mentor, I think, is a really, really important step. Even better if you have someone in mind that you know that could really make a difference. But I think that really shows strength for us as women in the workplace, advocating for what you need in order to further your career. I think that's pretty much what I had to say on that.
Well, thank you very much, Eleanor. That was great. Lucia, you seem very eager to go.
So yeah, I agree with everything that's been said so far. So just to add kind of like my 2 cents on this. So the first thing is something I've experienced in my career is I don't mean to blow my own trumpet, but I tend to be naturally confident, so I can be more assertive maybe than other people can be. So I tend to say what's on my mind quite freely without worrying too much about who is in the room. Obviously, always with respect and everything, but I would say what I think. And in the past, often I've been told that I've been described as bossy, and you know, without kind of, again, I like the fact that all of us are underlying the fact that we don't want to create this distinction, this kind of like separation of the sexes. And I think it's a great sign of how times are changing, and the fact that we are, you know, embracing that we are different and that we have differences. There are some traits, I think, that in women tend to be maybe more common, and there is some research on that. And I must say that in my experience, I tend to hear that when men are confident, they tend to be called assertive and kind of and leaders, while women tend to be more called as bossy or scary or other terminology that I'm not going to use on a public call. And I must say that this in the past knocked my confidence quite a lot, because it made me felt like something was wrong and I couldn't really be myself. So my kind of recommendations for this would be you don't need to change who you are. You can adapt. I like what Kelly was saying, kind of like you need to be mindful of what the context is in a good way, in a sense that you don't deliver the same message to different people in the same way, because it's not going to land the same. So you need to kind of being able to pick up what's the best way to do it. At the same time, if you are one of those people that are more confident naturally, use that as a source of good. So support others in the room that might not feel that confident in speaking up, and that maybe struggle more to be heard. And this might be women or might not be. So it doesn't really matter, but use that as a source of kind of like bringing people in. So if you see that someone hasn't had the chance to put a word in a meeting, but they seem like they have something to say, you can support them, you can give them a helping hand, or you can go and have a chat with them later on to try to kind of understand what it is that they had to say and how you can work together. The other thing that I notice is that a lot of women tend to be prone at collaboration. So there is an inclination on kind of there. Again, I'm generalizing. If that doesn't apply to you, that's totally fine. The other side of it is that sometimes there is a bit of there is research that back this up, that there is a sense of guilt if you prioritize your own priorities rather than other people's priorities. And this is something that, if that happens to you, it certainly happens to me, it's something that I need to be mindful and try to make a little bit of an effort and kind of think through what is that I want to give my time to and why. So there is a lot of self-reflection that I think is needed, and we all need it, men, women, and obviously any other gender you might recognize yourself in. We all need our moment of self-reflection and kind of thinking through. So whatever it is, your gender, that applies. So it's not only for women.
So I want to add one more note, is that, it's very important that we foster this trusting environment where when we see people who really, want to make a point, we really give them an opportunity, even though it could be in a very, high pressured or tight environment where time is an essence, because everybody brings to the table some good ideas. If someone is constantly being ignored, sometimes that will lead to frustration, and frustration will lead to sort of all kinds of consequences. So I would say, as a good manager, you need to recognize, just say, wait a second, let's just have some other additional thoughts from somebody, and also give some sort of a feedback. Feedback could be really very honest, right? This is a great idea. This idea, let's discuss further offline. And the idea is like, what will be the alignment of this idea to the goal? So I think you can be very objective and in a way, in a nurturing way, as a very good women manager. I also share this link in terms of negotiation skills. And I think a lot of times, we have the impression we're not asking for more, we're hesitant to ask, and then we're kind of really want to negotiate, but we don't know how to be at the table. So through that link that we had this discussion at the Women in Statistics and Data Science conference, that can really give you some, tips. And in addition, we also show quite a bit of additional sort of references that could be really helpful materials. We also had some live polling in terms of how often, we encounter negotiation tasks in your practice.
Thank you very much, Kelly. And also, before Lucia, I really love the point of giving feedback. I thought that was really good. It's something I'm doing my PhD, and right now I'm feedback to death, and I can feel how that is very good. So that was very excellent. So I guess we're sort of coming to the end of the session, and I was thinking that maybe it would be helpful if we each summarize sort of like the professional tips you have on collaboration going forward. And that's sort of like, I can see how.
I have a question from the audience, by the way. From the Q&A, I do see a question.
I don't think that we are taking, do
yeah.
you ever struggle with balance? I guess in a way that like we can wrap up the summaries, the question is, do you ever struggle with the balance between being supportive when managing staff and having to give tough love? So yeah, if you would like to address that question, you are open to it. And if not, we would love to hear like a summary of the tips that you have for collaboration in general.
Yeah. Yeah, I would like to summarize. I think, first learning is that collaboration comes in, in terms of all types, forms, shapes, sizes. So I think there's no one size fits all, but in terms of how you tailor your approach on a collaborative team, first of all, you need to know your stakeholders. You need to understand the problem. And then you also need to see a bit sort of individual personalities as well as cultural backgrounds. Finally, you also need to see the organizational context where what is the purpose of your collaboration? That's most important, right? There are many sort of logistic planning and then really sort of interactions among people. But as I said, for example, a lot of our collaborations are really patient-centric. When you think that patients are waiting through my collaboration, if a brilliant result will really help somebody in this world, it really motivates all of us. So I would say being purposeful for collaboration will be really, really meaningful for everybody.
That was really good. Lucia, would you like to go next?
Yeah, so just some final thoughts from me on the tips and then also on the question, because I think the question is very interesting. So the kind of like big tips for collaboration is the big thing is learning. So try to learn as much as you can. So basically attend all the sessions that you can, obviously compatible with your free time and with availability, but I still try to do it as much. Now there is a lot of stuff online, so that's great. Including attending networks events focused on women. The reason why, even though I don't like to kind of keep the separation as we were saying before, because we are moving away as a word from those kind of concepts. However, there is a lot that you can discuss with others that are similar to you and they are going through similar challenges. So there is value in kind of building your network of people that understand what you go through, obviously with individual differences, but there are some common challenges that is good to reflect on and also to support others and think through what challenges others are going through, because other groups will go through different challenges. Learn from those that are further down the road. So if you find when you attend these events or when you attend any sort of seminars, you might find women that you admire or they look like a role model. Just go and ask them to mentor you. So be brave and just go and ask them. Trust me, they'll be very happy to do so in most cases. So I've done it a lot of times, so I'll encourage you to do that. But also learn from those that are different from you, because that diversity brings value to you and kind of can help you develop different skills or a way of thinking that you didn't know. And then last thing is, don't change the core of who you are. You can adapt and grow as a person and as a professional, but the core is who you are. So don't feel like you need to change the core of who you are. The question is very interesting. For me, the basis of that question is trust. So what really matters in there is the trust. So it's building enough trust with your staff so that if things needs to be changed, for instance, there is the knowledge that is because we are trying to build together and we are trying to do the best as we can. And also so that I'm in a pod and it's going on and on with the lights. I don't know what's going on, but hopefully still okay for you. So it's the trust with your staff also, so that if they are struggling and they don't know what else they need to do or what exactly you've asked them to do, they will feel free to come and ask you. And it's better to have a question earlier than further down the road when the project or the work is too much developed. So I think there is an element of trust that, now that we all work much more remotely online, we probably need more effort and more time to be put into that to actually build that trust. Thanks.
Okay, I guess it's me next. So in terms of career tips that I would share with other female statisticians, I completely agree with Lucia, who says to go and talk to people. And I know when you start doing that, it feels perhaps very scary, and that these people are very important and they wouldn't possibly want to talk to you. But actually, the vast majority of people are lovely and are very willing to talk to other people, especially people who are just starting out. So sometimes you just need to be brave, even if it feels really uncomfortable to do it. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. So for me, one of the biggest career tips is to be very strategic in accepting opportunities that come your way, because you're going to get to a point where people are asking a lot of you and you don't have time for everything. And it's a fantastic feeling to be asked to do things, but don't immediately get swept away with that. So one of the things that someone said to me, and it really resonated with me, is that I don't need to give an answer straight away. So I always used to feel that I had to answer immediately, yes, I will do that. But actually, it's okay. And it's the right thing to do to ask for a little bit of time to think it through. So take your time to think through these things that people are asking of you. Think carefully about what's in it for you. And I know that feels rather selfish, but actually you do need to make sure that there is something in it for you, be that something that fits in with your career plan, or maybe something that you just love doing. That's fine, but don't overburden yourself, because that's very, very easy to do. Something else that I'm very much a proponent of is often you might spot an opportunity or a chance to contribute, and if you would like to do so, take the plunge and put yourself forward. Again, it's not necessary, it's certainly not natural for me to do that, but I've learned sometimes just to grit my teeth and just stick my hand up and to go for it. And it's a scary feeling the first few times you do it. In fact, I don't think I'll ever get over that sort of scary feeling of doing that. Sometimes it works out really well, and you get to do something that, and you can feel really proud of it. And other times it doesn't work out at all. But even when it doesn't work out, one of the things that I've learned is that often opens other doors that you had not really thought about at all before. And the final thing that I want to say is something that both Kelly and Lucia said, and I think it is super, super important, and that is to be yourself. Don't try and be someone else. So sometimes it's really tempting to put on a mask, but being your authentic self has so much power. I mean, it's really exhausting to do anything other than to be yourself. So be authentic. That is going to enable you to build really solid relationships with other people and to develop your network, which is then hopefully going to pay dividends in the end for you.
Thank you, Eleanor. That was great. And thank you all three, Eleanor, Lucia, and Kelly, so much for sharing your wisdom and your experiences. I think it's been really, really great, and it's given me loads to think about. So yeah, don't know if we can thank you with applause. I don't know, but I hope that you can feel all of our gratefulness and our gratitude. Oh yeah, there's little applauses. And thank you so much everyone for attending the session. And I hope that you continue to celebrate yourselves as women's statistics, and hopefully you continue to enjoy the event. So thank you everyone else for coming, and thank you to our speakers for sharing.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you all.
Organizers.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.